us today. We're welcoming now Benjamin Little, an Bauer, Mississippi ambassador. Benjamin, thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
So tell us how you came about becoming an ambassador for Empower Mississippi. I've got to believe there's a story behind that, huh?
There is. So post-release from MDOC custody, I went to work as a director of a treatment center in West Point, Mississippi. And it was through that networking that Miss Joanna kind of heard my story from pre-release to post.
Joanna from Empower.
Empower,
yeah.
yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
And she kind of came up to West Point, Mississippi, and did an article and sat down and talked to me for about an hour and a half, and I was able to share about what all I had accomplished post-release from prison. And then from that moment on, I've just been so excited to be an ambassador for them, just to be able to use this platform just to kind of educate and share light on the barriers that an individual has from release from prison.
Well, so tell us about that, Ben. Did you encounter some barriers when you were released that perhaps precluded you from employment, as an example?
Yeah, so one of the many things, barriers it creates is employment due to having to check a box on an application.
Yeah.
And then for me, I went to a new area. I'm originally from Brandon, Mississippi, and I moved to Columbus, Mississippi. So for the first 7 months after my transition, I was not able to find work. So I was having to drive back to Jackson every week and stay with my parents just to be able to have a job.
Yeah.
Since that time, I've faced barriers, whether it be licensure. Since my release, I've got my bachelor's degree and my master's degree from Mississippi State University, and I'm a certified rehabilitation counselor. I'm able to sit for the LPC exam, which is the mental health equivalent of therapist. However, I'm not able to do so due to my felony record at this point in time.
Okay.
So I still live with barriers and limitations due to my past experiences well beyond my release from prison, which was in 2019.
Are you starting to see, though, Ben, that a number of employers seem to be warming up more to the idea of hiring those that check the box, as we say, that they're trying to figure out a way to bring them onto their company and to give them some meaningful work?
Yes, for sure. Even in my own life, I, by day, am a rehabilitation counselor with the state of Mississippi Department of Rehabilitation Services.
Okay.
I take great pride in being a state parolee and state employee. That only happens through what you mentioned, their willingness to be able to look at the individual rather than a background check. To be able to get to know the individual on a case-by-case basis and give certain certain advantages.
Yeah.
In addition to that, being a man, there are a lot of manual labor-intensive jobs that are open and available to individuals coming out of prison that have a transferable skill. But the problem is for those that don't have it and being able to overcome that background.
Is there research, Ben, that shows that when someone is released, that if they struggle to find work because they've got this background, this record, that perhaps they fall back into committing crime?
Well, I think that the Mississippi recidivism rate itself is evidence enough, which is almost 80% after 3 years of release from prison. So that in itself, as I jokingly say, we know how to make money. It may not be legal or illegal. But if we're not able to work and have adequate jobs, we still have to eat. We still have to have housing. So then that's when the crime rates and everything go up, which leads to incarceration.
What do you do in your role as an ambassador for Empower, or do you work with groups and address organizations, assemblies where you talk about the need for common sense policy around this issue?
Yes, not only talk about it, but also live it. In addition to my job, I created a therapeutic sober living community where we take housing in West Point, Mississippi, and we allow it to individuals coming out of jail or incarceration or treatment, just trying to bridge that gap. So we do workforce development, job search, job prep, job assistance, and we allow an individual to come in with nothing, which is pretty much what they have whenever they're released from prison. And we provide them housing, we provide them transportation, we network with employers to kind of give them the ability to start over.
The goal being to reintegrate them as productive members of society and not fall back into that life of crime. And as you say, they're going to eat. I mean, they're going to figure out some way to produce income We want them to do that legitimately and lawfully.
Right. Yes, and getting the community, what I consider community inclusion rather than exclusion, just we're seeing it as we the people, as the Constitution says, and not those people or them people over there. And just having people get to know the individual so that it could change the social stigmatization that is so rampant here in Mississippi.
What about policy needs that we have here in the state of Mississippi? What sort of reforms would you like to see our legislature enact to address this issue?
So for me, firsthand experience is the transitional case management. Right now, an individual has access to case managers inside prison. However, when they're released, the only person that they're reporting to is their probation or parole officer.
Okay.
There's no case management to help that individual get SNAP, EBT, food stamps, to be able to get other type of community resources that may be available because there's not anyone helping provide them that networking resources. So just having somebody transition with them through that process could drastically change not only the reentry as far as committing more crimes, but it also allows them the opportunity to become tax-paying citizens.
Sure. And the recidivism rate, you just mentioned that at 80%. So I just wonder, if you looked at our prison population today, Ben, could you apply that same metric? Does that mean that 80% of the people in there have committed multiple crimes, or they've been back multiple times, or is that really a measurement of people that, the same people, I guess, committing crimes on a repeated basis?
So I think it's both. In my time, my 5 years I spent in MDOC at the state prisons, there was a lot of returned visitors. There was a lot of people that were coming back that had committed new crimes, and just the cycle just continued to just go about, whether it be probation violation or committing a new criminal act and getting another felony conviction. And then you also do have the one time. I went to prison one time and got out. However, I have multiple felonies. It just took a while for me to get convicted of them, and then I was convicted over the next year for all 6 of them.
I see.
But a lot of your population are repeat offenders that are just cycling through. They're coming back. They don't have any type of resources available to them when they get out. And as I stated earlier, we have to change the mindset. We have to change the thought process to see that, to give hope in an individual rather than them just going back and feeling overwhelmed.
What do we need to do to just improve the rehabilitation of those who are incarcerated, to make sure that when they're released, they're just not sent out to the streets, that they've got some skills and they've been developed somehow and have overcome some of their challenges so that they can be productive?
Yes, and starting that process while they're still in prison would be a huge advancement, giving them transferable skills, giving them workforce development, and not only that, but addressing the mental health that comes with incarceration. As I stated earlier, an individual, I spent 4 days in a one-man cell, and it was probably one of the toughest things that I did. And there's individuals doing that for years at a time, and then they're being released. And to not provide any type of mental health care to that individual is criminal.
So really, is it fair to say that if all we do is incarcerate and lock them up and as part of their punishment, that they're debt to society, but then we release them and nothing's happened during that time period, increases the likelihood that they repeat crimes and end up back in the same place, or I guess more importantly, they just can't be, again, productive, value-producing members of society?
That is correct, and I think that if you just look at the 3-year scale for our recidivism rate in the state of Mississippi, you will see that it's continually going up. However, crime is still going up. So just associating the two, you say, I want to be tough on crime. Well, we're being tough on crime, but yet crime isn't reducing.
Okay.
So therefore, we need to be able to sit down at a table and change our approach. And how are we addressing these rehabilitative measures that need to take place for an individual prior to their release and post-release?
Gotcha. What about, real quick, nonviolent criminals, offenders of just possession of drugs, for example? We lock them up sometimes for several years, really don't do anything to address that problem, let them out, and they're back at it.
I was sentenced for 20 years to the Mississippi Department of Corrections on possession of drugs, controlled substance 2, which is methamphetamine.
Yeah.
I have 5 of those, and I was sentenced to 20 years to serve for just nonviolent drug possession.
Spend a lot of money locking people up for that as well, right? But what they need, generally speaking, is some sort of help with that issue.
Rehabilitative measures, you're correct.
Got it. Benjamin Little, ambassador for Empower Mississippi, has been our guest. We're at the Empower Mississippi